Hello again. I believe that I have remarked before that I was born down by the docks of London, Custom House to be precise. My father was in the Merchant Navy in the 1930s and I have family roots in that part of London going back a very long way. I have noticed over the last few years that cities like London, Liverpool and Cardiff are often portrayed now as prototypes of multiculturalism, with black, white, Indian and Chinese people living cheerfully side by side. It was never that way in reality. The black sailors used to stay in ports for a few weeks or months until they found a new ship. They certainly ended up leaving a legacy from time to time in the way of pregnant girls behind them, but they were not really communities in the way that we mean the term now, with families of different ethnicities living together in one place. In London, one would certainly see sailors from different countries, but they were only transients, not resident in the city. The exception to this general rule was the Chinese community of Limehouse. The Museum of London runs the Docklands Museum, which is on the Isle of Dogs, where the main docks were in London until the containerisation of the 1960s and 1970s. They are desperately anxious in that museum to prove that London was always a vibrant and multicultural city, and they try to show this with regular displays featuring as many black faces as they are able to muster. As always, the emphasis is on Africans and Caribbeans rather than, say, the Chinese, who did actually have a community near the docks. When costumed reenactors appear, they are more often black than white. The thumbnail to this video shows a typical publicity shot from the Museum of London at Docklands. But the really interesting thing may be seen by clicking on a link in the description to this video. The museum has recreated a Victorian section of old streets around the docks, and in this clip we see visitors to this exhibition. Not a single white person is shown. Anybody watching this clip would think it was from a museum in an African country. Here, though, is the great irony. Those visiting museums in London will know that one very seldom sees black people in them. There are various reasons for this, into which I shall not go, but the fact is that you can visit museums in London and not spot a single black family. I went to the Tower of London yesterday and saw not one black person. Historical sites and museums just do not seem to be something which attracts black families in general. The publicity shots showing museum displays full of black children and adults are usually done during school trips, when the staff they get all the black teachers and parents together with black children who are present. They make them all cluster round so they can take photographs that make it look as though only black people are present. Even when specific events aimed at black families are held in museums, they don't usually turn up. But anyway, as you can see from the clip to which I give a link, the overall impression which museums hope to present is that they are full up with black children and their parents, with no white people to be seen. Meanwhile, the insertion of crazy images of black people continues elsewhere, particularly on the BBC and ITV. My wife got me to watch a new situation comedy on BBC called The Witchfinder, which is set during the English Civil War. It shows rural England in the 1640s to be full of black people. I would say roughly 10 or 15% of the population are black. Of course, this is a fantasy comedy, but then so too was Blackadder. There were no black people shown there in Elizabethan and Regency England. What do you suppose has happened to change this? It is clearly a conscious policy which has developed in the last 25 or 30 years. The effect of this constant drip is interesting. Because I'm so used to it, I hardly noticed when the scenes from the English Civil War played out with a lot of black people in them. I mean, I know perfectly well there weren't any black people in England at that time, but I'm so used to seeing things like that, I didn't register. For younger people who have grown up with this and been taught at school that Britain has always been a multiracial society, I'm guessing that this false belief is now deeply entrenched, and that if anybody tried to tell them that until the end of the Second World War this country was ethnically homogenous, they would not believe it and dismiss you as a racist crackpot. Once all television programmes, all Hollywood films, and every book for children contains these images, they will have no method at all of establishing the objective truth of history, unless they wish to research by looking at old books and original newspapers and so on. The past has been rewritten before our very eyes in our lifetime.